Hello everyone. Today I thought I'd show you a little bit around my computer to give you some examples of how you might organize your digital materials on your computer in a way that makes sense and makes things a little bit easier to find when you start accumulating a lot of files. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and it depends a lot on how you do therapy and how you organize right now and what works for you. So I'm going to show you some different ways. I set up a lot of examples, so hopefully one of these ways clicks for how you do therapy. But the first way I'm going to show you is by theme. I know a lot of you do therapy by theme. So you might do back to school theme in September or vehicle theme. So this is a really common way to organize materials. So here I have by theme, and then I have these 4 categories, back to school and fall, and here you can see I have months. So if you click on September, I would add materials I'd use for September. I would caution you to not just start stocking this with everything that you can find on Pinterest or on TPT or currently own for September, because it's going to get really overwhelming. So if you're just setting this up now, I would only put files in this folder that you're using. So plan your therapy for September, and whatever you use, put in this folder. But don't put things there unless you've actually you're actually using them. So here's an example. You might go into my lesson plans. This is something I use all the time in September. So you just would take this and copy it and then paste it over into your September folder. I might want to reference these articulation mini cards, so I might paste those over as well. And then I might say I'm going to do the preschool language binder because I do a lot of assessment and stuff in the beginning of the year. So that might be an example of what I put in there. Like I said, I would just keep it as small as possible, as minimal as you can. So realistically, you're probably going to have 10 to 15 products at least in these folders, but I wouldn't just put like 100 things in there. It's going to become really hard to find. Let's say for me, something I used this September was these one-sheet language lessons. This is a year-round product, but I use it every month. So if you have products like that, feel free to put them in every folder. So you might put it in September and October and November and go through spring and winter and do that as well. Don't feel bad putting things in multiple places like that. That's how I would do it. Just so it's all in one place. So during September, you only need to look in the September folder. You don't need to look in a ton of other places. You might notice that I have the assembled folder here. I put that in all of my organization systems because a lot of my products that I use, that I make, they don't need to be printed continuously. So if we go back to these lesson plans, these ones, I print and bind this in a book. I do not reference it in a digital format really ever. However, I want to keep it easily accessible in case I want to send something home for a parent, or I want to show an administrator a lesson plan, or if I lose or damage my book in some way. So I wouldn't even put that in the September folder. To me, that just gets too overwhelming if it's not something I actually ever need to access because I have it printed and laminated and bound already. Then I would take it and put it in the assembled folder. That way, if you ever need backups, they're all here, but they're not cluttering up all the stuff. This is stuff that you truly need to print on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis when you're lesson planning, if that makes sense. So if you start to notice that your theme folders are being filled by these products that you use year-round, like you have more than 50% of the products in this folder are products that are not actually themed, and you're ending up copying and pasting a lot between months, I would say sorting by theme is probably not what you should do. I do not sort by theme because I do not really do themes. I sometimes use seasonal reinforcers, but I really don't do themes a lot. So I'll show you a different way. You might want to try sorting by topic. So this takes really traditional approach of material storage. You would put products for AAC users here, articulation students here. So here I have this articulation self-rating visual freebie, and I would just put it in the articulation folder. This is not by month, obviously. If you wanted to break it down by month, you could. I would say that to me gets too confusing because I don't really have cohesive groups as far as like all my articulation kids are in one group. So I don't really want my materials broken up so much, but this is a different way to do it. So you just might take, you know, this early categorizing and describing. I would say that would be a language, plop it in there, and you might even break language up by grammar, vocabulary, assessment, all sorts of things, whatever you're targeting the most. I would say this would be a vocabulary project and put it in there. So this works great if you have a ton of year-round materials. That's how I tend to do therapy, and this system works really, really well for me. And then I can show a little bit of how I lesson plan. So once all your stuff is in here, so you might put this in like your grammar folder. I don't know why it's not doing that for me here. There you go. So you might put it in a grammar folder. And then, let's see here. We might put the fluency, obviously, in the fluency folder here. So once this is done, this is how I store my materials. I have them all organized by category and topic. Once a month, I do my lesson planning. I will talk a little bit more about my organization systems in a different post, but I have expandable file folders or working folders for each of my students on my caseload. So I lesson plan only once a month. I take the materials out of these folders and print the pages that I need just once a month, and then I stick them in my students' folders. So this is how I do it, kind of a shortcut. I have these stickies that I keep on my desktop. Max has them, but you can do any sort of like to-do list or anything. And then I jot down like common goal areas. So I might have 10 students working on vocabulary strategies, 4 students that are AAC users, 12 students working on summarizing, and you just keep listing kind of common goal areas. So I look at my goals at the beginning of the year. I spread out kind of all my data sheets and organization, and I just think big picture, what are a lot of areas that overlap? So another one that I can think of might be like conversation skills. And let's say I have probably about 8 students working on that. So once you have this all broken up, it gets a lot easier because all you need to do is monthly think what your groups are working on, what materials you want to print more of. If you want to print more of these one-sheet language lessons, let's say you're working on summarizing and vocabulary strategies, I would open it up, find the sheet, I can minimize this a little bit, find the sheet that you want to use, so you might be using this one. Pull this up, and I would say I can target summarizing and vocabulary strategies with this. So I'm going to print 22 of these pages, just this page. And then all of the students that are working on vocabulary strategies or summarizing get this put into their folder or their expandable file folder section or whatever. You can also, instead of having individual folders, if you have a very large caseload, do that by group. So each group gets a folder, and then you can do, this by group. But that works really, really well for me. By the end of the year, this school year, I knew when I was printing material for synonyms and antonyms, like I'm like, I'll just print like about 8. And then I just kind of shoved them in, and then when I had leftovers, I just threw them away. But then they're all in the file folders. Each month when I lesson plan, I go back through the folders. I get rid of materials that we didn't end up using or are kind of half finished, and then I keep things in there if we want to repurpose them. This makes, for me, lesson planning super easy. So I would get the sticky. Another way you can organize your files would be by group. So I only see 5th and 6th graders, but you would kind of write your kind of groupings here. You might put all your push-in resources here, your 5th graders here. So if I were doing it by group, I would take a folder and put a lot of my products in like an everything folder, or still organize it by topic. And then I would copy and paste in materials that you plan to use that month, that week, whatever you're planning for, into the group. So you might have a 5th grade, we'll make a new folder. It might be like 7th hour group. So I'm going to even write language group just so I had a better idea. And then I'm only going to put in products in this that I'm going to use for my 7th hour, 5th grade language group this month. Voila. So that's it. Then when I'm doing that, I can pull it up. I find that this works really well, this system, if you have a lot of resources that are no print or you like to pull things up on your computer. That way, when you're in this group, you can just click 5th grade. It's your 7th hour language group, and then you can pull this up, and everyone uses one sheet language lessons from the computer screen. Saves on printing and tends to work pretty well if that's how you do therapy. You might need to mix and match a lot of these systems. Like I just said, if you're doing by group, you might also want to have an everything or by topic folder. But these are the systems that have worked really well for me. When I worked with younger students, like preschool age, I tend to use more themes. Now that I work with older students, I do not do themes and I stick more by topic. A couple of hints really quick for digital storage is, I mentioned this at the beginning, but really keep your materials streamlined and minimal. If you're not using it, don't keep it in these folders. You can always make another folder of old materials, unused materials. It's fine to put stuff in there, but don't like start clouding this up. Terrifies me that some of you would go out and like search Pinterest and just have like hundreds in here, because then you're just making it as hard to use your digital storage as it is to use the internet to find things where there's just so much information. Another tip would be to really think through your own caseload and how you lesson plan, how you organize. You might have just low-level language and upper-level language every month, and then everyone in the lower-level language does the same activity and you modify it. So maybe you make a group for low-level language or a folder for low-level language and a folder for upper-level language. Think through how you plan and how you organize. Third tip is to rename your files. So this is a preschool language binder that I made, and it's primarily assessment pages. So here you can see this assessment page. So if you're really just using this as an informal assessment, you might go to Get Info and rename this. So you might want to, and I think you can actually just right click and rename too. Yep, so you can just rename it. And I might just do like low level language assessment. You don't need to call it what I call it if that's not how you use it. That way, if you search for files, you can search for whatever terms make sense to you and not what I've named them. And the fourth and last tip would be, if you have hard copies of things like parent handouts that you've accumulated throughout your career, I would scan them and upload them and keep everything here. There is nothing worse to me than sorting through a file cabinet of old materials and things that you don't use, and then things get crumpled and they're a hot mess. So spend a few hours and just scan them and then put them in whatever system works for you. I'll be doing a blog post about this, and I'll try and include some more information, so check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thanks for watching.